I am very happy to be here. Thank to all of you to come to this conference, because I was very near also to Pope Paul VI, that today is Pope Paul VI. When I arrived to Rome, was Paul VI the Pope, and I had opportunity to know directly the Pope, and was the Pope to accept me the incardination, that is a system that we have in the Diocese of Rome. And for this, I know also many friends of the Pope, and I read especially the conference that the Pope gave Paul VI to the Academy. And for this, I am also very happy that I was invited to speak also for I put the title of this conference like Paul VI Prophecy. And the prophecy is for a civilization of love, of sustainable development and social inclusion. We can say that all the things that we say today are in the message, in the magisterium of this great Pope. In his last message to the Academy, which we consider his spiritual testament for scientists, Blessed Pope Paul VI expressed some reality very important concepts on the scientist's vocation. Pope Montini, of course, is the Pope of the encyclica Populorum Progressio, that all of you maybe remember, where he states that development is the new name for peace. And this was in 1967, almost as further interpretation of the meaning of development. Paul VI speak to the Pontifical Academy 10 years more or less after, and say that we can put this in a marble, like made the Italians, in a marble in the center of our room in the Academy. He said, two attitudes, it seems to us, to me, should characterize the scientists. And we can say all the leaders, and we can say all the people. And especially the scientist who is a Christian, inspired in the gospel. On the one hand, he must honestly consider the question of the early future of my kingdom, and as a responsible person, help to prepare it, preserve it, and eliminate risk. We think, look this, we think that this solidarity with future generation is a form of charity to which a great many men are sensitive today, many people. He speaks about the Green Party in this time. But, and this is the second attitude, but at the same time, the scientists must be animated by the confidence that nature has in store secret possibilities which it is up to intelligence to discover and make use of in order to reach the development which is in the Creator plans. This hope in the author of nature and in the human spirit rightly understood is capable of giving new and serene energy to researchers who, especially who is a believer. This is the finish of the text. This enlightened words contain a real program for scientists, for political and economic leaders, and for all people of good will. who believe in the trust of sciences. In essence, he said that respecting nature means persevering it, but persevering it also means developing in according to these real potentialities that the scientists must discover. Therefore, the scientists, and especially the Christian scientists, must examine the future of humanity and of the earth, and as a free and responsible being, must contribute to prepare and to preserving it and to eliminate the risk both of the natural and of the human environment. However, at the same time, the scientists and the leader must be moved by the trust that nature has in its evolutionary mechanisms, potentialities that intelligence and freedom must discover and implement to achieve the development that is part of the Creator design. In this sense, although limited, man's action, human being action, also women action, participates in the God's power and is capable of building a world suited to his double bodily and spiritual life. A human world, not one for a group or for a class of privileged people, but for all people. This hope and trust is God, author of nature, and in the capability of the human spirit, are real capable to give a new transcendental energy for all people. Of course, there are the original sin, and the original sin is always lurking, and current sins also, and human errors can cause man to disobey the invitation to collaborate as vicar of God on earth and harm the natural and human environment. But for this, we need, with these principles, to analyze today's situation. And we can say, today, solid scientific evidence, and I am very happy to hear the former conference by Chris that in reality anticipated my text. But it's clear that the human activity today, based in the use of fossil materials, contribute decisively to this trend. Coupled with an economy based on profit and on the gains finance placed in order to profit from money itself, without a clear orientation to the production of goods. This leads to social exclusion and the new form of slaves, such as forced labor, prostitution, organ trafficking, and the use of drugs as method and instrument of corruption. Therefore, a program in the life of the Populorum Progressio and Pope Montini's further interpretation must include climate stabilization, the sustainable development of the natural environment, and the social inclusion focus on the centrality of the human being and the common good. The global situation today, that these are the conclusions that we arrived with both academies, and in this are more or less repeat what are the statement of our academy, the Academy of the Pope, and other things maybe in the discussion we can add. We name our time the Anthropocene era. Humanity has crossed the threshold of the new era. Our technological skills have led man to a crossroads. We are the haste of 2 centuries of considerable technological advancements. Steam power, railroads, telegraph, electrification, automotive transport, aviation, industrial chemistry, computer, and now the digital revolution, biotechnologies, monotechnologies, and robotics. These advances have rapid the whole economy into one that is increasingly urban and globally connected, but also more and more unequal. However, just as humanity confronted revolutionary change, this is the words of Rero Novaro, in the 19th century, at the time of the industrialization, today we have changed the natural environment so much that scientists, using a word coined by our academy, tend to define our era as the Anthropocene. That is to say, a period of time in which human action is having a decisive impact on the planet due to the use of fossil fuels. If current trends continue, this century will witness unprecedented climate change and the destruction of the ecosystems with tragic consequences for us all. Human action that does not respect nature has a boomerang effect on human beings, creating inequality and increasing what Pope Francis has defined as globalization of indifference and economics of exclusion, Evangelii Gaudium, which endanger solidarity and present and future generations. Let us limit ourselves to some obvious and grave things by quoting Paul VI words and saying, organizing crime, premeditated form for the extortion of often fabulous amounts of money, by threatening the death of innocent people. Isn't this an epidemic of evil, a bad and cruel, that betrays a death of noble and moral principles, that has caused the conscience of many children of our time to first solemnly collapse? And what can we say about the propaganda in favor of the liberalization or legitimation or procured abortion, with not maternal heads resigned in defense of the nascent creatures and of the vocation at the service of life? And should we not have at least feelings of pity and hope for entire population who are still languishing in hunger and misery? And should we not feel at least a shudder of outrage and fear for armaments, which extend the lucrative market throughout the nation, and for the tremendous episode of the civil wars, which are possibly the fatal precursors of other conflagrations on which the radio station and the newspaper of the world speak? Should we not have at least an expert appeal to prevent today at the roots the wars that tomorrow with incalculable fury could once again bloody the face of the earth? Finish the text, and this was in the audience in 1975. Advances in measured productivity in all sectors, agriculture, industry, and service, enable us to imagine an end to poverty, shared prosperity, and a further increase in life expectancy. However, unjust social structures, say evangelical, have become an obstacle to the appropriate and sustainable organization of production and to the equitable distribution of its fruits, which are both necessary to achieve those objectives. The relationship between humankind and nature is filled with unintended consequence of the action of each of us at the expense of present and future generations. Social environmental processes are not self-correcting, and this is very important. Market forces alone, with not ethics and collective action, cannot solve the interrelated crisis of poverty, exclusion, and the environment. However, the failure of the market has gone hand in hand with that of the institutions which have not always aimed at the common good. That is to say, there are many institutions that are institutions of sin, say John Paul II, a structure of sin. But there are other good institutions. But these good institutions don't do and don't find the common good many times for the people to control this institution. Problems have been exacerbated by the fact that at present economic activity is measured only in terms of gross domestic product and does not take into account the degradation of the earth that goes with it, nor of the unjust inequality between countries and within each country. Today, there are many articles. Our academicians say that many democracies today are not exactly democracy, but plutocracy. That is, Aristotle said, the corruption of democracy is the demagogy, and the plutocracy, that is to say, the determination are made by the money, but not for the common good. GDP growth has gone hand in hand, which is unacceptable gaps between rich and poor. The latter, in fact, do not have access to the most of the advances have occurred in our time. For example, 50 of the available energy is used by less than 1 billion people, where its negative impacts on the environment affect 3 billion people who do not have access to it. These 3 billion people, in fact, have so little access to modern energy that they are forced to cook, heat, and light their homes using methods harmful to the earth. And this is the consideration that make our academician Ramanathan, that is an Indian, and he born near to the Himalaya, and he knows what is the system that have these families to use carbon, and it's really a disaster for the climate and for the health. The heavy use of fossil fuels, on which the global energy system is based, profoundly disrupt the Earth climate and cause acidification of the world oceans. This is the real globalization, a physical globalization that goes through the oceans to the sea and to the atmosphere and to the astro-atmosphere. And this is a communication immediate for all the land, all the world. Global warming and the extreme weather condition it entails will reach unprecedented levels during our children's lifetime. And 40 of the world's poor, whose role in the pollution worldwide is minimal, are likely to suffer the most. Industrial scale farming practices are transforming the land all over the world, destroying ecosystems and threatening the diversity and survival of the species of the global scale. Yet, despite the scope and intensity of this unprecedented land use, food insecurity is still a global threat. 1 billion people suffer from chronic hunger, and another billion suffer from so-called hidden hunger caused by micronutrient deficiency. This is even more tragic when you consider that 1/3 of the food produced worldwide is wasted, which, as Pope Francis said, is like stealing from the table of the poor and hungry. And we have here the conclusion of the report of the Intergovernmental Panel of Experts on Climate Change, that more or less say the same that say our academy, that was the first 20 years ago to put the alarm of this situation. And this was the team of Crutzen, Nobel Prize winner, Molina, Nobel Prize winner, and Ramanathan. And when I was appointed as Chancellor of the Academy, I see the discussion that have this Nobel Prize, that are Nobel Prize in the field of Earth, with the Nobel Prize of Physics that say, look, you don't say this because the people can't believe, and also the science could be in question. And today, these people convinced all the other academicians, all the other fields, and also the social fields, the economists, and try to convince also the bishops and in the end the Pope. And maybe the Pope the other day, when he speaks to the popular movements, say for the first time officially that he is writing an encyclica about climate change, about social inclusion. This is to say that in the end arrived also this. And you know that many people call Pope Benedict the Pope Green because he was very concerned about this situation. I don't want to read this part because we don't have too much time, but you have my conference and can read this conclusion of this new institution that is very important, Intergovernmental Panel of the Experts. The importance of acting now, and this is the conclusion of our activity, the activity of our academy. 2015, and I come back to the year that was exposed by Chris. 2015 could be a decisive year in history. The United Nations as a whole has unique opportunity to establish a new and sustainable course for the global economy at 2 summits. The one to draft the Sustainable Development Goal, the new Sustainable Development Goal in September. I am member of this commission, and the one on climate in Paris in December. We still have time to act. The challenge of climate change has become not only economic, political, or social, it is also an issue of moral, religion, values such as justice and social inclusion. The obligation of solidarity with the future generation and the moral obligation to care for the earth, namely creation, which is our habitat. And this is the point of the concern of the Pope, that these problems are in relation of the moral values, in relation of ethic, in relation of moral, in relation of values, in relation of the justice with the poor people. In view of persistent poverty, increasing economic and social inequalities, and the ongoing destruction of the environment, governments around the world have called for the adoption by 2015 of new universal goals, called Sustainable Development Goals, which should serve to guide actions on a global scale after 2015. Achieving this goal will require global cooperation, technological innovation, most of which already exist, and economic and social support policies at the national and regional level, such as taxation and regulation of environmental violations, restricting an enormous power of transnational cooperations, and equitable redistribution of wealth. It is now abundantly clear that the relationship of humanity with nature must be managed through collective cooperation at all levels, local, regional, and global. The technological and operating means to achieve a truly sustainable development are already available or within reach. We can put an end to the extreme poverty with target investment to promote access to sustainable energy, education, health, housing, social infrastructures, and livelihood for the poor. Social inequalities can be addressed with measures to protect human rights, the rule of law, participatory democracy, universal access to public service, the recognition of personal dignity, the significant improvement of the effectiveness of fiscal and social policies, ethical financial reform, policies creating decent work on a large scale, the integration of popular informal sectors of the economy, and national international cooperation to eradicate the new forms of slaves, such as forced labor and sexual exploitation. Energy systems can be made more efficient and less dependent of coal, oil, and natural gas in order to prevent climate change, protect the oceans, and clean the air from pollutants generated by coal. Food production can be made much more profitable and less costly in terms of water consumption and soil, more respectful of farmers and indigenous people, and less polluting. Food waste can be drastically reduced with both social and environmental benefits. The biggest challenge, however, may lay in the sphere of the human values. The main barriers to achieve sustainable and social inclusion are human inequality, injustice, corruption, and human trafficking. All the economy go to the profit and not to the human person, as said many times the popes, and especially Pope Francis. Our economies, democracies, societies, and cultures are paying a high price for the widening gap between rich and poor, within each nation and within them. And perhaps the most damaging effect of the broadening gap between income and wealth in so many countries is the progressive reduction in equal opportunities. Indeed, what is more important is that inequality, global injustice, and corruption are undermining our ethical values, personal dignity, and human rights. There is a strong need for all of us to change belief and attitude, and to fight the globalization of indifference with its culture of waster and idolatry of money. We must insist in the preferential option for the poor, strengthen the family and the community, as is the program of Pope Francis, and honor and protect God creation as humanity fundamental responsibility toward the future generation. Humanity urgent need to revise its relationship with the nature, adopted the aforementioned developed goals in order to promote a sustainable model of economy, development, and social inclusion. Healthy human ecology, in terms of ethical virtues, contribute to the achievement of the sustainable and balanced environment. Today, we need to establish a mutual beneficial relationship, and this was the idea of Pope Benedict. The economy needs to be imbued with true values, and respect for God's creation should promote human dignity and well-being. On these issues, all religions and all people of God's will can agree. Today, young people will embrace them to create a better world. The message of the Pontifical Academies is an urgent warning because the damage of the Anthropocene are real, and the injustice of the globalization of indifference is a serious issue. Yet, our message is also one of hope and joy. This is exactly what the blessed Pope Paul VI wanted to achieve with his project of the civilization of love. An healthy, safer, fairer, more prosperous, and more sustainable world is within our reach. The believers among us ask the Lord to give us our daily bread as food for the body and soul. And I want to finish with our wish that we express to the Pope. Follow the lead of great recent Pope, especially Pope VI. Pope Francis has an unique role as a religious leader and moral guidance to protect, preserve, sustainable development of natural environment and achieve the social inclusion that can not longer be postponed. Normally in the Academy, we have the audience with the Pope. And if we don't have the audience with the Pope, it's a problem, because the academicians are not happy. But in the end, this audience is like a message that the Pope gives to the academicians in terms of private things, in terms of sacristy, we can say, in terms, yes, it's important, but it's for your consideration, more or less. But in the last meeting with both academies, was completely different. All people asked, please say to the Pope to speak, because our message is not enough heard. Only the Pope can change the things, because he's the only, and this is said by the academicians, he's the unique moral leader, and this is a moral problem. I was very impressed by this. Therefore, our academic supported the Pope initiative to publish an encyclica or another such important document on climate and social inclusion to influence next year's crucial decisions. In fact, the idea is to convene a meeting with the religious leaders of the main religion to make all people aware of the state of our climate and the tragedy of the social exclusion, starting from the Bible message that man is the steward of nature and of its environment, and human develop according to its potential and not against it, as Paul VI intended. Thus, the prophetic message of Paul VI continues to be valid even in this new era that humanity is beginning. It is connected to the programmatic expression that he used at the end of the 1975 Jubilee years, when he urged environment to promote the civilization of love as its successful culmination. In terms of public and social life and relationship with nature, this civilization of love is the coronation of the period of grace and goodwill of the Second Vatican Council, or rather the beginning of a new era of grace and goodwill which history unfolds before us. Thank you. I'm sorry for my English.